Hi and welcome to the SI Experience. It's Chris Doughty here. Welcome to everybody. Today we are very excited to be discussing a topic that, of many of you who are watching from internationally, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia. We've got a very special guest today who is highly experienced in all avenues of that, dealing with clients, investing himself. And so today I thought the interview would be really, really good in the webinar for people to really ask questions, get under the hood. What are the challenges? What's going on? And so without too much of a delay, I'd love to welcome Jimmy Nye. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
How's it going, Chris?
So, Jimmy, it looks like you're in your offices, relaxed in Hong Kong. How are things over there?
I'm the only one left. Everyone's gone. It's 8 o'clock now in the evening.
I know, but you guys, it's a good time, right? You have dinner, people can relax and watch this after dinner, after the kids are in bed and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me that it's going to be recorded. It's actually bank holiday right now.
Right. Oh, God. Most people consume stuff in their own time, right? And so this is all, again, everybody who's watching, it is recorded, and so you can watch it in your own time. But again, please don't stop you from, we're now building up an audience now, right? So please comment at any time. You've got to be part of the group. Please comment. You can add comments in, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube down below. Jimmy and I will answer any of your questions. So please don't be shy. Please don't be shy.
Yeah.
So today, Jimmy, what we wanted to go through with a lot of people is you yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background as an investor, but also what you do now, and why does it make you an authority of what we're going to talk about today? So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, actually, I was born in Hong Kong, but I was actually brought up in London. I spent over 22 years in London. I bought my first little buy-to-let in Stepney Green, E1, on an auction. That's my first property. And I kept it until now. I still have it now.
It's long term.
Is an ex-council house, and it has done so well. It's unbelievable. And I've been doing different stuff now, doing commercials, HMOs.
Yeah.
I've got about 8 units in London, and I love investing in UK. And I've been helping people to come to UK and buy.
And from your side, one of the questions is, from a lot of, we have a lot of clients from Hong Kong, from Singapore, and in Asia, and I think a lot of people automatically, people do it for various different reasons. And so, like for example, our South African clients are very much, all about, security of money, wanting to be able to move their money over, actually generate, £2,000 to £4,000 a month, something like that over a period of time. And then that allows them to have that confidence in knowing that their money is secure with the volatility that naturally happens sort of in South Africa, etc. And also they can live like a king off £2,000 to £4,000 a month, very much so. Now that's down there. I think there's more of a generic reason why a lot of investors want to invest in the UK. But from your side, what is the fundamental cultural reason why the UK is an attractive proposition, from your side of the world?
Well, I would say there's 2 types of people. Generally, Hong Kong is not unfamiliar with UK. Hong Kong is a UK colony, so people have friendly emotion about UK anyway.
Yes.
But I think there's 2 major type of people. One is the middle class. They have some money in the bank. They have a few million. They already have a property in Hong Kong. They've got shares. They've got stocks. What are they going to do with it? They're getting 0 interest from the bank, and they can't afford to buy another one in Hong Kong. So the money sitting in the bank. So and they don't want to risk it in the stock market. So what can they do? So they're thinking maybe we move it into bricks and mortars. Maybe in UK, they were told it's pretty good, pretty safe. That's one type of people, and that's another kind is the young people. they can't afford to buy in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And
So,
when you say can't afford to buy in Hong Kong, just for the uninitiated, just give us an idea of on average. I mean, obviously it'll be area dependent, whether you're in, on central Hong Kong Island or whether you're in the outer territories or anything like that. But from your side, just give us an indication of what a typical sort of 2-bed flat would cost in Hong Kong, in central Hong Kong. So if I was going to relate that to London, Zone 1, Zone 2, what would that typically sort of look at from a price point perspective?
that'll be close to £1 million.
Wow. Yeah. And what kind of rent and what kind of yield? I mean, I guess we've got something, as always, here on our webinars. We've done a little bit, and this is something that from your side highlights, I guess, the attractiveness on the UK on a worldwide level, not just from a Hong Kong perspective.
Yeah. If you talk about yield, I mean, you'll be lucky if you get positive yield. Most of the time, you get negative yield.
Yeah.
Because the rent they get does not cover their mortgage on 100% of the time. So, but if you buy in cash, of course you will probably get 2% to a little bit more than 2% maybe. If you just do a simple buy to let, that's the kind of return you will get.
Wow. But then on the positive side, from a Hong Kong perspective, historically, especially over the last 10 years, you've seen a very, very, aggressive increasing market from a capital perspective, right? And to the extent of, I think the local government had to initiate, some extra tax laws to try and stop that and cool the market slightly. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, it's called a double stamp duty. Basically, they don't want people to buy and sell so quickly. So, for example, if you buy this year and if you sell it this year, it's like I don't know, it's like 20% tax or something.
Wow.
But if you keep it for more than 3 years, there's no tax. So basically, people don't want to buy and sell so quickly as a business.
And really, I guess it's a very similar sort of play, sort of like the London market here. People are not able to, younger families are not able to sort of get into the property market because the entry point is so high. And so, from our perspective, that's very much moving to a rental market. Is that a similar kind of a vibe that's happening over with you guys, that actually younger people and people that, are not able to afford their own flat or their own home?
Yeah, I mean, over 50% people are renting in Hong Kong.
Wow.
And the people who buy, they rely on the mom and dad bank to get a deposit. Because if you buy anything close to $1 million, you have to pay 50% deposit.
So even from a financing perspective, it's very limited. And so now you're sort of giving us a bit of an indication as to the limitations. Does that make sense that you guys have there? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Hong Kong to bits. Spent a lot of time there, but I think from a guy who's living here in the UK, I think I get a little bit, complacent to how amazing the UK is on a global scale. And so it's just interesting to hear from you on the ground and say, working with investors to acquire in Hong Kong, but also internationally. It blows my mind sometimes, to actually hear it. I know the facts, I know the data, but actually just hearing it is quite mind blowing. And so,
actually, I think that's one of the problems, because in Hong Kong we're so blessed. We have the most expensive property in the world. So everywhere we go, we say, "Wow, that's so cheap!
Yes.
Wow, that's so cheap!" Just because they say it's cheap doesn't mean it's worth the value, and they don't know.
And I think that's a very good point there, because so cheap doesn't necessarily mean in good investment, and there's a lot more facets to the investment journey. And I think one of the things that we wanted to show, with again, from a UK perspective, why is it an attractive proposition? And from your side, what we've got here is reasons to invest in the UK as well, especially from afar. Just comment on a couple of these points here, Jimmy, that from your side, really resonate with yourself, but also the investors in Hong Kong.
Well, why is UK attractive to Hong Kong buyer?
Yeah.
I mean, number one is they believe the system. They think it's safe. Number two, they think they can get much better rental yield, especially for the younger people. The younger people, they want to save up. They want passive income. They want a higher yield. So they can't get that in Hong Kong.
Right.
So this is one of the reasons.
So what we've got here is just in sort of 5, high level points. Again, from your side, yes, Hong Kong and the national investors there have got that association, with the British, from a long-standing position. But actually, from a tactical perspective, us having a historical, political, and economic stability is obviously a good, attractive proposition, because we know suddenly the economy is not just going to go belly up or hyperinflation, etc. Record levels of population growth. We're, from our side, we're a tiny little island, but we have 68, 69 million people here, which allows that whole proposition of housing supply is at a 100-year low, and so relative to an increasing population, obviously that drives demand. It drives rental into a higher bracket, I guess. Artificially, there's a massive demand for housing, but obviously the housing isn't there, and so rent therefore creates a high yield. And then again, you talked about 50% of the population in Hong Kong is renting. Well, we're at less than that.
Over 50%.
But the way it's going, ours are going very much that way. We're currently in the next 5 years probably 20%. So again, that increasing proposition for investors, knowing that you're going to have increased demand for rental, and so therefore all of that is really creating a rising yield market. So like you talked about, yield is a very interesting proposition because it doesn't really happen with you guys over there.
Well, it does happen, but that's not the main point of people investing. People invest because they assume the property price will go up, because it has been going up for so many years. It has been going up for like 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
Until now.
And so therefore, really, again, it's a very different investment philosophy, right? And we could stand here all day, I think, Jimmy, and sort of, highlight, and we'll probably do that, quickly just now, some other attractive propositions at the moment, I think, which is quite interesting. Again, we've got, people talk about rising markets. Here is, experts from Savills, Knight Frank, and ODR who are, looking at, property prices increasing by 17% plus over the next 5 years in general in the UK market, and with rental prices increasing due to increasing demand that we've just talked about, even from a long-term perspective, this isn't the only thing, but this is to me as an investor here, it's a secondary bonus. It's not my primary investment strategy. My primary investment strategy is very much around adding value, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Immediate, cash flow yield today. And then if I get the secondary bonus of a long-term market increase, then that's even better for me. But that doesn't quite sit with the investment philosophy that sits in Hong Kong. Would that be fair?
Yeah, they think it will be the same, but it's not. Because in Hong Kong, people flip properties in months. Sometimes, I know a guy who flipped 30 property a month, buy and sell property 30. I mean, that was before the stamp duty.
Yes.
Because they can do it and they can make money this way. But, in UK is more a longer term. I mean, if you do anything less than 5 years, it's short time.
And again, sort of to be able to do that, and that flipping only really works in a rising market, right? At the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, you cannot have just a continually rising market. Yes, over a period of time, it is in average, a rising market, but you will have cycles within that, up and down cycles. So from your, from any investor's perspective, you have to be understanding that those cycles will occur. It's not an if, it's not a but, it's going to occur. And again, sort of the discussion, which is obviously quite topical right now, what is the impact of the economies of both, worldwide economies of America, the UK, Asia, China, relative to COVID-19, and already, looking at yesterday, the statistics coming out of the US, it's the first time that they've had a substantial economic decrease of over 5%, since 2008. And so that impact is already here. But the key thing is, if you're sat on just a capital growth strategy, you're gonna come unstuck. And so you need to obviously have either a secondary backup, or you need to be understanding that when the exact time to get in and when the exact time to get out is. But unless you're mystic magician, it's a very hard thing to pick the market accurately every time.
Exactly. And the Hong Kong market right now hasn't been moving up and down. It's been pretty stable, but who knows? It hasn't crashed.
And obviously at the moment, again, from an attractive proposition, which again, at the moment is we're looking at, the current update of what the effect in the global economy, what has happened between the Great British Pound and the Hong Kong dollar. And right now is obviously a very attractive proposition where relatively, even this short period of time, the amount of money of GB pounds versus Hong Kong dollars that you can actually acquire is now making, and again, it's a secondary bonus in my opinion. It's not affecting the primary investment strategy, but again, at the moment, you can get more for your Hong Kong dollar, which again is making it even more of an attractive proposition.
Yeah, it fell below 9 for 2 days. That's like 35 years low.
Wow.
But even now it's 9.6, 9.5, 9.6. That is still like 15 years all-time low.
Wow. And again, it's not saying, become a foreign exchange trader and bank on it. It's, again, just look at the situations. And for me, when I was investing in 2008 in the downturn, I was just doing it based off cash flow. But obviously the secondary benefit was you buy when the market is unconfident in itself, buy low, sell high is the trading principle in life. And I think, again, if you've got the extra, aspects of this, including foreign exchange and being able to buy, is the economy going to increase? I mean, if you look at the FTSE 100, just as that dropped below 5,000 for a long time, and now it's at 5,700, 5,800, and that's in the period of 4 weeks. So, again, if you had the foresight to buy low, sell high, well, we're going to be in a market which is unconfident at the moment. So this is just an extra benefit, don't you think?
Definitely. I mean, majority of people in Hong Kong have multiple currency accounts anyway. So we are aware of this. That's why there's a tremendous amount of activity of people looking for UK properties.
Right. Interesting. And so, I mean, again, I think that's sort of, from my side, hopefully with everybody, who's here live. And again, don't forget questions or anything. But what we're going to do here is really now get into utilizing Jimmy's knowledge and skill. And hopefully people on the call, if you've got any questions, please ask. We've already got a few questions in already, which is great. Please ask some more. Don't be shy. Do not be shy, everybody. And so what I'm going to put you on the spot, Jimmy, is really, saying to you, what are the 3 basic mistakes that, international investors that you deal with are currently doing, that's ultimately costing them time, probably aggravation, and ultimately costing them money? What are the top 3 things from your perspective that you're seeing?
Well, they think buying a UK property is the same as buying a Hong Kong property. So in Hong Kong property, you buy flats and you buy it and you wait for it to grow, to appreciate. That's the only strategy they have, because there's you can't really add value to the flats and make it to sell to a higher amount. So
for example, Jimmy, you're basically talking about if you've got a flat, you've got a very a rigid structure. You can't control the whole building. You can't really increase square footage. You can't add extensions on. You can't add balconies on. It is what it is, right? And at the end of the day, all you can really do is change the kitchen, give it a lick of paint, make the decor look nice. So there is limited. What you're saying is limited value add opportunities relative to the typical Hong Kong market.
That's correct. So they buy this. So they with this mindset in mind. So majority of people go and buy off-plan or new properties in UK, in London, in London, in Manchester or Birmingham.
Yeah.
And they buy this brand spanking new property, thinking it will do the same as they did in Hong Kong. So that's majority of people who buys it. There's nothing wrong with that if you want to hold and wait for a long time, but it's not going to be like Hong Kong. You can flip it in a few years' time and you earn a lot of money.
So from your side, really, it's really, the number one thing that you're saying is they're trying to apply. A lot of investors are trying to apply the Hong Kong investing philosophy here into the UK market. One, that's a little bit limited. But two, it's not really taking advantage of the great investment market that we have here. I'd probably want to, say, and I think what we're going to try and do here is show what that means. So if we just revise this, the Hong Kong investment philosophy in Hong Kong is, typically flats. There's a limited variation of investment strategies. There's a limited ability to add value. So, yes, you can buy, you can hold, but in an increasing market, that's great. But again, you need a hell of a lot of capital as well. So it actually limits it to a very small segment of the population. Low yielding as well. And you said even not even low, but sometimes negative yielding. Wow. I don't know what to say to that, because I guess I'm lucky to be here in the UK, right? Even in London, you're going to have properties here from a residential perspective yielding 3%, something like that. So even in prime central, it's going to be positive. So,
well, not if you buy brand new buildings in London off plan from a developer, we should buy it from Hong Kong. You probably, if you rent it out, you probably doesn't get positive. You probably get zero.
And that's because of the unfortunate, situation that people are trying to apply the same philosophy, but at the same time, not really doing their due diligence or understanding. Does that make sense of what price they're paying for relative to the local market? So what I would turn around saying, Jimmy, is, if this is the Hong Kong investment philosophy, what I wanted to show everybody who's watching is really just in a very quick nutshell what it means. So, here in the UK, just for starters, we have a lot of different types of property: terraced houses, semi-detached, flats, apartments, freehold houses, mixed commercial, listed buildings. We've even got social housing. And that's not even touching the strategies around that. And that's not even understanding how to add value. So again, just trying to, explain to people in a nutshell what that means, So if you apply a very simple understanding of the Hong Kong investment philosophy and you try and apply that, one, you're missing out on the potential opportunities. And two, by not understanding, you're exposing yourself to risk by not understanding what, as I say, buying a flat in one location. Well, what does that mean if that block of flats is next to, many other, houses, and what does the local market need? What do the tenants, if I can go and rent a nice tenant 2-bedroom flat, in a second-hand property versus a new build property, which is overinflated and highly priced, I need to understand that market dynamic. So I can't apply the same philosophy, right?
Yeah. So right now, there's a lot of people in Hong Kong are buying in Birmingham, Manchester, even in Liverpool, brand new builds. And those ones, the developers promised them, some of them promised them some kind of rental guarantee, like, I don't know, 6% for 2 years or something like that. So that's the way to attract them from moving from London up to north.
And Jimmy, again, sort of showing that in again the dynamic of the UK market. What we try to show here is just, again, combining it. Well, the different types of property, the different types of strategy. So on the left-hand side, you've got buy-to-lets, which are houses or flats, which is typically what I would call the Hong Kong only market. Not only, I mean, but available to the Joe public. That's what I would, not somebody who's got 5, 6 million or 10 million in their back pocket. And again, just to highlight to everybody, multi-lets, HMOs, serviced accommodation, off-plan, holiday lets, commercial, small, medium, large, conversions, developments, and then on the right hand side, we've got all the different demographics of types of people that you could be servicing in amongst all of these different strategies. Now, that may seem complicated to a lot of people, but in actual fact, by understanding it through education, actually brings a whole lot more of opportunity to add value and make your investing much more robust, because you've got cash flow, you've added value, and in longer term perspective, you've even got the potential of capital uplift if you're acquiring in certain areas. Is it? Yeah.
That's a really good chart. That is actually I teach this stuff in Hong Kong to my students, and that makes it very, very clear. Yeah, I mean what they don't know, they don't know. I mean you can't blame them.
And so this is again, what we're trying to do here on the webinar is sort of educate people, but at the same time really make some show how this relates to it in reality. And hopefully this gives an understanding to a lot of people. We've got a lot of people on the asking questions now, around in Hong Kong. There is the typical buy to let, which is what I would call to families, to professionals, etc. But again, in the UK, the opportunity really is so much more vast. But at the same time, you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, there are other issues that come around by not understanding the local market.
I mean, I always tell them, no, don't look at buying a flat in Hong Kong. It's the same as buying a flat in UK. It's different. This stuff's much more complicated than that.
But at the same time, the opportunity is also really interesting as well. And again, this map here just shows all the different areas, which I think again at a high level is just showing you relative to all the strategies what areas kind of work a bit better. Down in sort of southeast London, you've got buy-to-let, you've even got HMOs that can work for professionals, but your yields on those will only be probably 7.5% in sort of the southeast on HMOs. Whereas in actual fact, if you're looking at different areas which would work more important for your cash flow rather than a capital growth play, then you can actually do that in the Midlands, slightly to the north, but you have to understand what is the local market demand and who the demographic is. And so this just really highlights, again, the complexities of the market, but in actual fact, in that complexity, when you know what you're doing, it makes it very much, in my opinion, simpler. Does that make sense? Rather than trying to force a square into a circle by using the Hong Kong philosophy in the UK market. And that, unfortunately, is where I think people get into a situation where either they don't know how it works, and so therefore, by then thinking they've met somebody who does, can actually cause them a lot of risk around when they're giving their money over and hoping that somebody's going to look after them. But that causes a lot of problems as well, from what you've seen.
Well, as I say, is using Hong Kong mentality, do the same thing in UK. For example, if they want to go and buy a property in Hong Kong, they go to an agent and they ask them, hey, I want to buy a property. And they're doing exactly the same thing in UK. They go to an agent, maybe they looked it up on a website, and they ask them, hey, I want to buy a property, and they sell them a property, and after they bought it, then they found out there's going to be problems.
And again, sort of, Jimmy, just highlight to me around, there's a conflict of interest when we talk about the agents. Okay, and from my side, to explain this to a lot of our clients is very, very simple. Here in the UK, we have estate agents. We have people who ultimately are making money on the sale of the property, the sale. So they make their fees by selling the property. Whereas in actual fact, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people get confused by somebody saying, well, I know what a good investment looks like. But unfortunately, they're making their money on the sale. So really, do they care about the incoming buyer? And no is the answer. And so
they're going to say everything they can in their power to persuade them to buy, because that's how they make money, and they're not really looking after their interests.
And from your side, again, I think you have an example of a subsidence property when we were talking previously, and just tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, actually, it's a student of mine came and she said, I've been looking property in London, and there's an agent telling me this is a great property. It's close to the tube station. And then he told me, by the way, the agent told me there's subsidence, and he said it should be okay. And because you're buying cash anyway, you don't need to lend from the bank. It should be no problem. And he asked me, should I buy it? I said, definitely not, because you might not need the lending from the bank. Because when you sell it, the person who's going to buy it will probably do. And the banks are not going to lend you on a subsidence with a property that has subsidence problems.
And again, just it's part of me just sometimes goes, oh no, I wish also people would just understand where they can go, either to understand what it takes, or more importantly, to be able to ask advice. And again, it's just a hard thing out there in the world to work out who's to trust and who's to not. But unfortunately, I think people have got to take that responsibility. Is you don't necessarily need to always just blindly trust, because the best way of counteracting that is understanding it to yourself, not necessarily being able to understand 15 years of experience of investing here in the UK, but understanding the property dynamics, what kind of works, what to look for, what not to look for. And that really comes through education.
I mean, it's just normal. I mean, the agent wants to sell your property to make a commission. And the agents will say, oh, it's going to be, this is a good price. You will get this amount of rent. You get this amount of return. It's been really, really good. And after they bought it, he told me I was expecting 500, maybe £600 rental. And now I can't rent it out for 4 months. I actually got a guy who did a small buy to let, and hopefully was getting £500 or £600 for it. He waited 4 months and still couldn't get it let. So he reduced it to 400. He eventually got a let this week, but it's okay. I mean, he wasn't what I expecting, but at least he got a let. But he could have found that out before he bought it.
And quite easily as well. And that's, I think, the disappointing thing. But just to know where to look and what have you, is something that I'd love to be able to sort of give to everybody, very easily. But unfortunately, people have to want to do that themselves. So if we just sort of recap, we said the 3 basic mistakes, and I think one is applying the Hong Kong investment philosophy into the UK market. We've just talked about, because of that and not really understanding it, therefore wanting to invest in the UK, but it kind of then forces people to have to blindly trust agents as well, or agents or anybody else that they've met, whether it's their friends telling them where to do it, etc. So, and then the third, real, question is, what's their biggest mistake? And what you've said is not taking advantage of the real UK market opportunities of adding value. And just from your side, what does that mean to people watching this?
Well, I think this is the ultimate about investing money, because is to make money when you buy. How can you make money when you buy? In Hong Kong, you don't. You buy and you wait. In UK, we have an opportunity that we can add value to force appreciate it by doing conversions, by making it bigger, by adding, by making the usage of the property in a higher value, which they don't really think about because they haven't been taught how to do it.
And from my side, again, understanding the local market, it's a bit like the other way around. If I was going to come to Hong Kong, I'd very much want to spend, if I'm going to be spending my hard-earned money into investing and wanting to understand the risk around it, etc., why would you not spend time or energy of your own to actually understand what you're investing in? And I think, especially, making that into a wider play, not just around property. For a long, long time, people have just been putting their money, because they've been told, into pension schemes. And yet nobody asks who the pension manager is, where are they investing their money. It's just something that they put aside. And I think one of the good things that's happening, because of the performance of pension funds and banks, etc., with regard to giving decent interest to individuals or consumers, is that people now are going back to the old mentality before the glory days of the pension in the 1980s, where more people were putting into the pension pots than taking out. And so if you retired in the 1980s and early 90s, you were having a full salary pension, and it was fantastic. But that responsibility now is not working. That model is not working, and that responsibility of your own pension plan, and more importantly, what you invest in and understanding that risk, is very much on the individual. And so for me, taking that time, if I was going to come to Hong Kong and invest, for a capital growth strategy, I'd want to understand the areas, the market, the buying process, and I don't understand why people have to rush into that. Does that make sense? And it opens them up to risk and loss of money.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of people are teaching people how to buy stuff in Hong Kong, but hardly anyone ever tell them about the risk. They only tell them about the good side. What you don't know is what you don't know. When you do know, you think you can do it by yourself, and then you get into trouble.
So from your side, then, Jimmy, we've talked about the three fundamentals or mistakes that people make. So what are your, from your perspective, what are the three? And I say nothing's a guarantee in the world, but the guaranteed solutions for investors to be better at investing. Just tell us what these three are to you.
I think they should learn how the people in UK does it professionally. At least open up their mind and see what opportunity is there, what other options can you have, and how to do it. I mean, basically is just to learn a little bit more, not just using one way to invest. There's many ways to invest.
And from your side, again, that comes through education and spending a bit of time on yourself, which, again, it doesn't need to be a massive amount of time, because, at the end of the day, property investing is done over many years and decades. So why would people not spend, a tiny portion of that, hundreds of thousands of pounds, on for themselves, wanting to feel more confident in what they're doing, by getting educated and learning, I think is and more importantly, education and learning, but then how to apply it. And I think that's where we see a lot of issues, where people offer the training, but unfortunately there aren't the ability to then operationally execute after themselves. They do the training, but then it's kind of like, oh, go and trust somebody, go and trust a sourcing agent. Does that make sense? They're quite good. That's not then applying what you've been taught yourself. It's then just going back to the original, hey, somebody do it for me and I'll stand back. But in actual fact, being in control of it yourself and being able to apply and understand your education is something that is not out there easily.
Yeah, we have a phrase that is to manage the manager. At least you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you can't even manage the manager. The manager gives you anything they want, and you say, and they take it. No, I had a lot of pain going through that. You have to know what you're doing.
And honestly, great expression there, manage the manager. To give you an idea, even for me in the UK, I myself have got a portfolio down in Plymouth, focused on students and corporate lets, etc. And I've got a manager down there, and in actual fact, I myself have to manage the manager, and because if I just blindly ignored it, I actually even employ somebody myself who's part of my team, to manage the manager, make sure that the manager are doing, the majority, 80-90% of the work, but actually making sure from a high level that things are done on time, etc. And again, it's personal responsibility and knowing what your responsibility is. And so it leads us kind of very much onto the second point, which is getting educated is obviously a massive part of it. How do you do this? How do you learn how to assess and find trusted people, though, Jimmy? And the word trusted is not 100%. It's the most likely to align with you to help you execute your investments.
Well, first of all, you ask them, how do they make money?
Yes.
If they make money by selling your property, they want to sell your property. They're not going to have your best interest at heart. So that's, they know that. The second thing is, I think you have to get referrals, get people who've done it before, You know, nothing's perfect, but at least you're relying on people who've used them before. You're relying on people with experience. So this will save you a lot of money. Try and error, see who's good, who's not good.
And also, I think there's the ability of, yes, it's all about, you know, having decent referrals and people who have used them before, etc. But there are ways that you can check yourself. And again, being taught how to do that, you know, going on Companies House, checking how long they've been trading for, what do their accounts look like? That can be a 10-minute check. And I don't understand why people don't want to do that when they're about to give tens of thousands of pounds to somebody to help execute, hopefully, a dream or a journey, investment journey that you yourself are responsible for.
Yeah, it's true.
So, and again, I think there's a third, you know, what's the third success solution for investors is, for me, you know, independence is crucial, but systems that are independent to protect your money and investments. And again, there's not many out there that are independent. It's typically you have your agent, you have your investor, and nobody before has ever seen what happens between those two. And as you will know, Jimmy, when you've got an uneducated investor who just wants to blindly trust, it always ends, and there's no accountability from the agent, then it can lead to some very uncomfortable situations and results.
Yeah, I mean, I was helping a client to buy a property. Even the solicitor gets it wrong. I have to read through the documents and say, by the way, does that really say what that is? And the solicitor have to go and double check it. Sometimes you have to find someone that they know to double check the things that they say they know. So it's better, especially when you first started. You know, you don't know how it goes. It's best to rely on someone that knows and how to do it. And if you have some kind of system that could help them protect their money, make sure the money is going to do what they say they will do. This is huge. I mean, I never had that when I started, and I made loads of mistakes.
And I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to jump in here and obviously highlight something that us as a company have been, you know, developed over the last 5 years to help with these situations. And for me, this is just, for example, of one of the systems that we utilize, or the investors can utilize. We're an independent company. And this system here is for escrow services, and not just for the fees, but it's really for the refurbishment, etc. And for people who are uninitiated. On the left-hand side, for example, this is the buying process. When you have an offer accepted, you will move the money to SI. And this creates a lot of confidence. One, you know it's protected in an independent, fully insured bank account. So at the end of the day, it's completely separate from sourcing investments. So even if sourcing investments went under, nobody can go after your money. But two, in you also dealing with the agents, sourcing agents, for example, they are then confident that you are putting your money, does that make sense, relative to the deal? But more importantly, the investor can control it. So when, for example, at every single stage, the investor has the ability to release those funds, they control it. And that's something, I think, Jimmy, that you've loved about this, is the investor remains in control. And that's something, when you blindly trust, you're not in control.
Yeah, especially when they say, "Oh, give me all the money up front. I'll do it. Don't worry." You know.
And again, that sort of relates to builders. So again, just highlighting, you know, back on the screen here, you know, for the investor, again, uses the escrow services through SI, but more importantly, through our live conversational area. So this is all digital. They can do it through their phone. They can see every step. It's all kept on record. But even with, you know, dealing with builders or architects, you can pay and can control at every stage that money to be released. And again, for both sides of this ecosystem, that then gives confidence of the teams that you have, the sourcing agents, the builders, in the investor. And it also allows the investor to have confidence in them, because they know that they're in control of releasing those funds, subject to key milestones being hit or legal contracts and stages being completed.
Yeah, I mean, if everything goes smoothly, you don't have anything to worry about. But in this type of property, this type of business, there's always going to be some things happen. And just to protect yourself, why not? Especially when you're new, you're not expert yet. Rely on people who's got a system to protect your money. I think it's great.
And I really appreciate that, because I know that you yourself have, dealt with many agents around the world, and I think when we first met a year or two ago, it was very much around, look, I've got these problems, what do you guys do to help? And showing you them, I think your eyes sort of went, wow, this is something that, if you had, or if investors had or knew about it and be able to control, it's something that peace of mind and control is something that, you can't normally buy, but in this case you can.
Well, at least they got at least one more layer of protection.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And from your side, then, we've gone through sort of the three mistakes. We've gone through 3 solutions, and again, we've got some really good comments. So maybe we move into sort of live Q&A. So we've got Helen, who's going to come up. So this is for you and me, Jimmy. I'm just going to change it back so everybody can see it quite clearly. In actual fact, we've got Tim. Tim's just said we're going back to our exchange rate conversations. So when he lived in Macau in 2013, the exchange rate was £1 to 13.2 Hong Kong dollars for a long time. So this is a truly extremely attractive time to invest in Hong Kong dollars into Great British pounds, because now it's, as I say, around about 1 to 9.6. So that's nearly a 20%, just over 20%, discount as such, just relative to a foreign exchange trade.
Yeah, a lot of people who've been around for a long time, they're expecting the normal rate is going to be 12, maybe 12 and a half, 13. So nobody knows when, but that's we're expecting sooner or later it's going to go back to normal.
So here's a good question for you. This is from Helen Liang. Hopefully I've announced it. So Helen is asking, as a first-time foreign buyer, is it possible to get mortgages, or do I have to pay in full? What is your take on this? And then if maybe I'll take it on as well.
Well, I think depend on how much the property is. If it's under 70,000, under 80,000, probably no one's going to do it, because it's not worth it for them to do it. All the paperwork they do. If it's it depends on, if it's more expensive property, they probably can get it.
So I think from my take, and what we did a webinar with Mark Haywood from Watts Commercial last week. So what I would say, Helen, is very much so just have a look at the webinar there. That was what is the actual lending market like today, even during COVID? The answer is yes, you can, absolutely. You will need to talk specifically to a finance broker, and again, don't just talk to anyone. Within the SI platform, we've got some really good brokers, and you can get hold of Mark at Watts. So please watch the webinar with some really good information. But yes, you can. At the moment, it's slightly limited, but more importantly, even in the last sort of 5 years, just to give you an idea, you could 5 years ago, but the rates that international first-time buyers were able to get was sort of 9-10%, with sort of 60% loan to value. Even just before COVID, so this is probably only 6 weeks ago, you could get 70% loan to value at 4.89. I mean, that's just unbelievable. To kind of give you that indication of what that means, is that means that an international first-time buyer, yes, you have to have the right company structures. Yes, you have to have the right broker. But more importantly, it's showing the ability to, there's lots of tools out there to increase your investing performance, but you need to know about it. And you need to, more importantly, take responsibility for working with decent people. So again, please have a look in, come on in, have a free trial at Sorting Investments, come and see what it's all about. But more importantly, we've had now 43 million pounds worth of properties been bought by individuals, predominantly internationals, who have successfully attained mortgages, whether that be on the refinance on the back end, or whether it be actually buying in the initial purchase of the property. So the answer is, Helen, yes, but there's a little bit more complexity around it. And either learn what that is, please, don't just do it blind. And more importantly, as I say, the avenues of you learning that is through education. So again, please come and have a look at Sourcing Investments, or very much talk to somebody like Jimmy, who very much knows, as I say, the ins and outs. So great question. Really appreciate that. There's other questions that we've got, Jimmy, which is really applicable. So this is from Daniel. Daniel is saying, after talking with lots of people, I hear a lot of "where should I buy" comments. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I get asked this all the time, and the answer is it really depends on your goals. You can't ask me where you should buy. I can't answer you that unless I know what's your goal, what's your objective, what you want to get from it. Because UK, we are very blessed that you can do all sorts. You can do appreciation, you can do rent, you can do the rental, the yield, you can do the forced appreciation. There's a lot of options you can do. So it depends on where you depends on what you want to achieve. You buy where you want. You can do it where you can do it.
And Daniel, what I'd like to say is, in actual fact, this was on our webinar on Tuesday with one of our mentors, Anthony DeVries, was talking about areas to invest in. How do you assess the area? And again, it's not just about what area do I buy in. The question is what do you want out of your investment journey, and what areas lend itself to allow that journey to exist for you, and how is that then applied to what investments you buy? So don't think about it what area first. In actual fact, the philosophy talk was follow the numbers. But again, understanding that philosophy and how you then get to the end conclusion is something you would need to work with somebody like Anthony or anybody else who's fully educated in working with people. Because again, what my journey is, whether it's Plymouth and London, whether it's your journey, which could be up north in Glasgow, everything has a positive side to it, but also you need to understand the risks and the negative sides as well, so you can actually be an effective investor. So great question there, Daniel. Really appreciate it. We've got one more, I think, here. We were going to do half an hour, Jimmy, but we could talk all day about this. We're at 52 minutes already, and it's felt like 5 minutes. But hopefully everybody appreciates it. We've got a really good question here from Jenny in Singapore. I don't have enough time. Do I have to fly to the UK to invest successfully? You take that.
I've been helping my clients, over 100 of them, buying properties overseas. We've never ever actually been to that country. It depends. If you have a good people you trust, and a good system, it should be transparent enough. Right now, you can Google it, you can check it. You can get people to go and check for you. Everything is really transparent right now. So
I think that leads. We've just had a great question just come in, which actually leads off the back of that. So this is Bowen. Bowen is saying, do you have a site view of all your properties, and do you contact your tenants, and how often? Quite a lot of comments in there. Great question, but quite a lot. So do you want to take that, Jimmy?
Well, it goes. I always say it's easy to buy a property. It's what happened after you buy the property. Who's going to look after it? It's the people who look after it. Is it good? And how do you know they're good? I mean, one of the questions I always ask the letting company or the management company is, how often do you go and check my property out? Do you take a video? Do you take a pictures? I want to know. I mean, some people say they do it once a year. I said that's not good enough. I want at least once every 3 months or once every month. Depends on type of property it is.
And again, for me, it's all right having those conversations, but having that built into your lettings contract with the management team, I can't really highlight it enough. We're in this market. The market is actually, in my mind, relatively small. It's for, everybody knows everybody within reason. And if I don't know somebody, then within a phone call, I very much can do. And so, therefore, I would turn around and say, with a lot of our agents, we do a lot of due diligence on the agents themselves, but also who they are utilising. So, utilising agents specifically who are HMO lettings agents is absolutely crucial. There's a very big difference between HMO lettings agents and buy-to-let agents. One is a lot easier, one is a lot more, it's quite a lot tougher relative to the work it takes, relative to the regulations, etc. So, Bowen, I think from your side is to have a site view. Again, look at that with regard to the site view from your perspective is a surveyor. So a surveyor being independent from it. Do you contact your tenants? I would highly recommend, no, you don't contact your tenants directly. I own a couple of flats around the corner here in Greenwich. I never contact the tenants directly. At the end of the day, are you here to do it as a professional investor, or are you here to do it as a part-time hobby? And if you want the latter one, then please contact your tenants and have all the hassle when they need a light bulb change. But I would say to you, understand the business systems, understand what it takes, understand margin for error, understand what management monthly operating costs are and how you bake that into your financial model. Because this is about being a professional investor. This is not about DIY with actually going around and doing things on behalf of tenants, because that's not what you're going to be able to do. And I think at the end of the day, that's where a lot of investors don't learn the business systems and the business dynamics. They just simply try and apply a little bit of their own logic to how they live on a day-to-day basis. But the question is, learn how to do it professionally, or if you want to do it part-time, do it part-time. So, you know, if you
I mean, this question goes back to the Hong Kong philosophy. Because if you rent a property out in Hong Kong, you probably never ever see them. You probably never ever get in touch with them unless there's a problem comes up. Yeah, but.
So we just had another question. This is from Stella. You know, with an international investor, how is that possible? As I just explained there, Stella, how it's possible is you need the systems, the contracts with the agents. What does that mean? Does that mean that you want to have them reporting to you every 3 months? How do you know who they are? Will you go through referrals, or you go through like SI, for example, and we can recommend lettings agents in certain areas who we know working with multiple investors. So again, it's about mitigating risk and designing your business systems around it. You're more than welcome to fly over. I remember talking with one investor who was flying over every sort of month to go and see, 4 developments, but that was an overcompensation because he did not have building contracts. He did not trust the individual to do it. And so therefore he tried to compensate by flying over from Macau every month. It's just craziness. That is not a businessman or designing how to professionally invest. And you have to learn these things. And so therefore, by learning those and working on the business and creating those systems and contracts and really learning from experienced people, that's how you build a successful investment business, not DIY.
Why don't she just hire a project manager to make sure the
But again, it's very much, it's again, it's a good question. Why not? But Stella, if you've got any further questions or understandings around that, you can very much go to, as with all of the people here, you can go to the SI Clinic. So just because it's not live, go to sourcinginvestments.co.uk/promo/clinic, and you can ask any questions or property problems, etc., or concerns that you have. So no, I really appreciate everybody with their interaction today. And just as a bonus for everybody, and this is for anybody watching live, or this is anybody watching in their in their own time over the next day or so, there's a bonus today, and that bonus is a 2-hour private webinar. It is a recording of a very detailed webinar that happened a week ago on how to analyze a deal in Manchester. There were 3 sourcing investments mentors on there, and there was an SI sourcing agent. But more importantly, for everybody on this call, especially from Hong Kong, is understand the depth of analysis that is required to be an effective investor. And more important, learning how that is done, but really seeing the principles of how that is discussed between the mentors, the sourcing agent, and you can learn a lot from that. So there's 2 times that is going out. What's that? You were on that, the original one. And did you enjoy it?
Yeah. I mean, people who say Manchester, they don't understand what Manchester is. I always laugh at them.
And I think, from my side, Jimmy, it's go on to that now, sourcinginvestments.co.uk /webinar 2. You can register for that. It starts at 1:30, UK time on Friday and Sunday. And for everybody here in Hong Kong, that's 8:30 p.m. Hong Kong time on Friday and Sunday. You can watch that yourself. please go and watch it and understand the principles of what it takes. And I think just as a you know, and from my side, here it is again for everybody. So on the screen, it's Friday, the 1st of May at 8:30 Hong Kong time, 1:30 UK time, and again Sunday, the 3rd of May at the same times. And you can register for that now. Please do. It'd be highly important for anybody who's wanting to understand a bit more of the processes. And I think just as one final visual, which I think is very relevant, which you would probably agree with, Jimmy, is, you know, for me is what is this? There's understanding in education, but then there's really what it all means. And I think this diagram here of what I wanted to highlight to everybody, there's training and education. And unfortunately, from a training and education perspective, a lot of people stop there. And it's not really about the operational execution. And from my side on here, you know, this is where SI, you know, comes in, where the end-to-end solution of we've solved and given the systems, and we've highlighted some of those systems to people today, but more importantly, combining them to end. I'm very few more questions. I think some comments from everybody. Oh, great! Thanks, Chris Doughty. Don't forget Jimmy as well. And as I say, Helen said thank you so much, Lars. But thank you so much for the interaction, everybody. Jimmy, we've gone over. Hopefully, it's been valuable to everybody. We've had a lot of people on this today, and we had a lot of questions, and we've got a lot more. But we'll probably get back to people individually. But thank you so much. I know it's late there, but for anybody from Hong Kong, please understand it's not just buy, close your eyes, hold, and trust. There's a lot more to it. Have an experienced team around it. More importantly, learn for it yourself. Combine those two things together. Take responsibility and control, and you can effectively long-term invest everywhere. But thank you so much. And again, some thanks to Jimmy as well. Play, Jimmy. Take care of yourself. Look after yourself very much, Hong Kong. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. Take care. And thank you so much, everybody.
You too.
Do it everywhere here in the UK. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. See you again next Tuesday.